"What's wrong?" Rachel asked, finally looking up. She probably saw the color drain from my face. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the paper, the words blurring, the room spinning. "It says," I finally managed, my voice a croak. "It says Noah isn't my son." Rachel's eyes widened. "What? That's impossible. There must be a mistake." "No," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "There's no mistake. It says he's my brother." My life, at least from the outside, looked like a perfectly constructed blueprint. A successful architect, a beautiful girlfriend, a son who called me dad, and a house that, while maybe a little too modern for my taste, screamed stable family life. If Norman Rockwell were still kicking around, he'd probably slap a sold sticker on the whole package. Of course, Rockwell never had to deal with leaky faucets or HOA disputes. Small cracks, the kind you don't really notice until the foundation starts to give way. I was rushing out the door, tie askew, coffee in hand, already mentally preparing for the city council meeting. Another debate about zoning regulations. My bread and butter, but about as exciting as watching paint dry. "Noah, have you seen my presentation folder?" I yelled, navigating the obstacle course of Lego castles and half-finished science projects that littered the living room. "It's on your desk, Dad," Noah said, not looking up from his tablet. He was 10, going on 17, and already more tech-savvy than I'd ever be. He probably knew more about zoning regulations than half the city council, too, if he cared to. "Thanks, buddy," I said, grabbing the folder. "Rachel, have you seen my keys by the bowl?" she finished, not bothering to look up from her phone. Rachel was a whirlwind of perfectly curated chaos. A freelance graphic designer, her life was a constant stream of deadlines, mood boards, and creative inspiration, which, as far as I could tell, mostly involved pinning pictures of succulents on Pinterest. "Right," I said, kissing her quickly on the cheek. "Late again? See you guys tonight." "Wait, Dad," Noah said, finally looking up. "Remember that DNA thing for school?" "Oh, right," I said. "The Know Your Roots project. Thought that was a bit extra, even for this school. You'd think they'd focus more on, actual education, instead of turning kids into mini Maury Poviches." "It's kind of cool, though," Noah said. "They give you this little kit, you spit in a tube, send it off, and then you find out where your ancestors came from." "Sounds like a good way to discover you're related to Genghis Khan," I joked. Rachel chuckled. "Or that you're descended from a long line of sheep rustlers." "Hey," I protested, feigning offense. "My family has always been upstanding citizens. Probably, I think—" "Famous last words," Rachel muttered under her breath. "What was that?" I asked. "Nothing," she said quickly. "Just saying it'll be interesting to see what it says." "Yeah, well," I said, glancing at my watch. "I gotta run. Noah, make sure you label that tube properly. Wouldn't want to accidentally discover you're related to Mrs. Higgins from next door. She'd probably try to bake you cookies." Noah rolled his eyes. "I know, Dad. I'm not an idiot." "That's what they all say," I muttered, grabbing my briefcase. "See you tonight." I walked out the door, the image of my perfect family waving goodbye. Yeah, perfect. Just a few cracks, a little bit of wear and tear. Nothing a little spackle and a fresh coat of paint couldn't fix, right? Famous last words indeed. A few weeks later, the results came. I remember that day vividly. It started like any other Tuesday. Council meeting in the morning, site visit in the afternoon. I got home late. Rachel was already asleep on the couch, a half-eaten bowl of popcorn on the coffee table. Noah was in his room, probably glued to some video game. "Hey, buddy," I said, poking my head in. "Still up?" "Just finishing this level," he said, not looking up. "All right," I said. "Don't stay up too late. Big day tomorrow." I went to bed feeling that familiar sense of, well, not contentment exactly, but something close enough. Routine, maybe. Predictability. I liked predictable. Or at least, I thought I did. The next morning, the envelope was on the kitchen counter. "Noah's DNA results," Rachel said, not bothering to look up from her phone. "Oh, right," I said. "Completely forgot about that." I picked up the envelope. a little white thing that held the key to shattering everything I thought I knew. I opened it, expecting some generic family history, maybe a distant Viking ancestor, or a great-great-grandfather who fought in the Civil War. What I got was a sledgehammer to the face. The results weren't just surprising, they were impossible, incomprehensible, a cruel joke. "What's wrong?" Rachel asked, finally looking up. She probably saw the color drain from my face. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the paper, the words blurring, the room spinning. "It says," I finally managed, my voice a croak, "it says Noah isn't my son." Rachel's eyes widened. "What? That's impossible. There must be a mistake." "No," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "There's no mistake. It says he's my brother." "A mistake," Rachel had said, as if a DNA test, the kind they use to catch actual criminals, could just misinterpret who my father was. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the woman I loved, but a stranger. A calculating, lying stranger. "There's no mistake, Rachel," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "The results are clear. Noah is not my son. He's my brother." Her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and guilty. "Liam, please," she stammered. "You have to understand." "Understand what?" I interrupted, the anger starting to bubble to the surface. "Understand that you've been sleeping with my father? That you've been raising his child, my brother, in my house, in my bed? Is that what I'm supposed to understand?" She flinched but didn't answer. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with unspoken lies and years of deceit. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "How long has this been going on?" She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "Years," she mumbled. It just happened." "Just happened," I repeated, incredulous. "You just happened to sleep with my father? You just happened to conceive his child? You just happened to keep this monstrous secret from me for a decade?" "Liam, please don't yell," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "Noah's right here. He could hear us." "Oh, he'll hear us all right," I said, my voice rising again. "He'll hear every single word. He deserves to know the truth, just like I do." "No," she cried, finally meeting my gaze. "You can't do that to him. You'll destroy him." "Destroy him?" I scoffed. "You think I'm the one who's going to destroy him? You've already done it, Rachel. You and your lover have already shattered his world. And mine." She started to cry in earnest now, the tears streaming down her face. "Liam, I never meant for you to find out. I swear." "Oh, I'm sure you didn't," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You were perfectly happy to keep living this lie, weren't you? Playing house with me, pretending we were a happy family, while you were sleeping with my father and raising his son under my roof." "It wasn't like that," she sobbed. "Your father, he took care of me when I needed it, and you were always working, always away. I was lonely." "Lonely?" I repeated, the word catching in my throat. "Lonely? Is that your excuse, that you were lonely? So you decided to betray me in the most horrific way imaginable because you were feeling a little underappreciated?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke volumes. "You know," I said, a strange sense of detachment creeping in, "I actually feel sorry for you." She looked up surprised. "Sorry for me?" "Yeah," I said, "because you think this is some kind of justification. You think that because I worked hard to provide for you and Noah, that somehow gave you the right to sleep with my father and completely obliterate my life. You're pathetic." "Liam, please," she begged. "I love you. I always have." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Love me? You don't know the meaning of the word. You're incapable of it. You're a user, Rachel, a manipulator. You saw an opportunity, a comfortable life, and you took it. And when my father offered you something more, something I apparently wasn't giving you, You took that too. Without a second thought for me, for Noah, for the complete and utter devastation you would cause. She was silent now, her tears finally subsiding. She knew I was right. She knew that her carefully constructed world had just come crashing down around her. Get out, I said, my voice cold and hard. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. Liam, please, she pleaded. Where am I supposed to go? I have nowhere. That's not my problem, I interrupted. You made your choices, Rachel. Now you have to live with the consequences. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, alone in the wreckage of her lies. I felt numb, empty. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was mixed with something else. Disgust, disappointment, and a profound sense of violation. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had desecrated everything I believed in. She had turned my life into a grotesque parody of what I thought it was. And the worst part? I had been completely, utterly blind. A fool. The drive to my father's house was a blur. I don't remember speeding, but I wouldn't have been surprised if I'd broken every land speed record on the way. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Inside, a tempest raged. Not just anger, but a deep, visceral revulsion. He wasn't just my father. He was the father figure in my life. The man I looked up to, respected, and he'd violated everything. His house was a monument to his ego. Big, ostentatious, overlooking the city like he owned it, which, knowing him, he probably thought he did. I parked the car, slammed the door, and marched up the driveway, my footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. I didn't bother ringing the doorbell. I just let myself in. He was in his study, naturally. Leather armchair, mahogany desk, walls lined with expensive books he'd probably never read. He looked up as I entered, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before it was quickly replaced by, what? Amusement? Contempt? It was hard to tell. The man was a master of masks. Liam, he said, his voice smooth, almost welcoming. What a surprise. I wasn't expecting you. Don't, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Don't even pretend you didn't know. His lips twitched. Know what, son? Don't play dumb, I said. You know exactly what. Rachel, Noah, the DNA test. The amusement was definitely there now, lurking in his eyes. Ah, yes, he said, leaning back in his chair. That little hiccup. A bit of a shock, I imagine. A shock? I repeated, incredulous. A shock? You slept with my girlfriend, fathered her child, and kept it a secret from me for 10 years. That's not a hiccup. That's a nuclear explosion. He shrugged. These things happen, Liam. Women are complicated creatures. Sometimes they seek comfort where they find it. Comfort? I spat. You call sleeping with your son's girlfriend comfort? She came to me, Liam, he said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. She was lonely. You were always working, always away. I simply filled a void. Filled a void? I repeated, the rage finally starting to boil over. You filled a void by betraying me in the most despicable way possible? By sleeping with the woman I loved and fathering my brother? He looked at me, his eyes cold and calculating. Don't be so dramatic, Liam. It's not the end of the world. Not the end of the world, I echoed, my voice rising. You think this is some kind of joke? You've destroyed my life. You've shattered my family, and you think it's not the end of the world? Look, Liam, he said, his voice laced with condescension. You're a successful man. You'll get over this. Find another woman, have more children. It's really not that complicated. I stared at him, my mind reeling. He wasn't just unrepentant. He was indifferent, completely and utterly indifferent to the devastation he had caused. It was like he was talking about someone else's life, someone else's pain. You know, I said, a strange sense of detachment creeping in. I used to think you were a good man, a role model, someone I could look up to. He chuckled. People change, Liam. No, I said. You didn't change. You were always this way. Selfish, manipulative, completely devoid of empathy. I was just too blind to see it. "Don't be so dramatic," he repeated. "I'm not being dramatic," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I'm just seeing you for who you really are. A narcissist, a predator, a man who cares about no one but himself." He smirked. "You always were a sensitive soul, Liam. And you," I said, "are a monster." I turned and walked away, leaving him sitting there in his leather chair, surrounded by his expensive books and his inflated sense of self-worth. I didn't say another word. There was nothing left to say. The rage was still there, burning inside me, but it was different now. It wasn't just anger. It was fuel. Fuel for what was to come. Fuel for my revenge. I would make him pay for what he'd done. I would make them both pay. I just didn't know how yet. But I would. I would find a way, and it would be exquisite. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine with a dash of irony. And what could be more ironic than using the very financial stability I'd worked so hard to build as the weapon to dismantle the life Rachel had so readily profited from? It was almost poetic. Almost. I sat at my desk, the glow of the laptop screen reflecting in my eyes. Spread before me were our shared financial records. Checking accounts, savings accounts, investment portfolios, everything we'd built together, or rather everything I'd built, while she was busy finding her creative inspiration, and of course, sleeping with my father. The thought still made my stomach churn, but the anger was receding, replaced by a cold, calculating focus. First things first, the money. I transferred every single penny out of our joint accounts and into a new account solely in my name. It was a clean sweep. No sentimental attachments, no lingering doubts. Just cold, hard numbers. The click of the mouse, the confirmation screen, it felt strangely liberating, like severing a physical tie. Next, I muttered to myself, the house. Changing the locks was a simple matter. A quick call to a locksmith, a brief explanation about a domestic situation. No need to get into specifics. And he was at the house within the hour. Rachel was out networking, code for meeting up with her equally creative friends to discuss the latest trends in artisanal cheese or whatever it was they did. Noah was at school. Perfect. The locksmith, a burly guy with a handlebar mustache and a general air of seen it all, didn't ask any questions. He just got to work, efficiently replacing the locks on the front door, the back door, even the garage. I watched him work, a detached observer in my own life. It was like watching a contractor renovate someone else's house. Except this wasn't renovation. This was demolition. "All done," the locksmith said, handing me the new keys. "Just make sure you keep these safe. Wouldn't want to get locked out of your own place." "Right," I said, a dry chuckle escaping my lips. "Wouldn't want that at all." I paid him in cash, a clean transaction, no paper trail. I watched him drive away, then stood there for a moment, looking at the house. My house. Or rather, the house that was mine. It looked the same, outwardly unchanged. But inside, the foundation had shifted. The cracks were widening. And I was the one holding the hammer. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years building this life, this image of domestic bliss. Working late nights, sacrificing weekends, all for the sake of providing for my family. And now, that very financial security, that very stability was my weapon. It was the tool I would use to dismantle everything I'd created. It was a strange feeling, this detachment. Almost as if I were watching all of this happen to someone else. Like I was reading a particularly gripping novel or watching a movie unfold. Liam Carter, the architect, meticulously planning his revenge. It was a role I was playing, a character I was embodying. And I was playing it with a chillingly efficient precision. I went inside, the new keys feeling heavy in my pocket. The house was empty, quiet, too quiet. I walked through the rooms, each one a snapshot of a life that no longer existed. Noah's room with its posters of superheroes and half-finished Lego projects. Rachel's studio with its mood boards and paintbrushes and the lingering scent of her expensive perfume. The living room where we'd spent countless evenings watching movies and playing games, pretending to be a normal family. I paused in the doorway of our bedroom. The bed was unmade, Rachel's clothes strewn across the floor. A half-empty bottle of wine sat on the nightstand. The air still smelled faintly of her. I shuddered. I picked up the bottle, examined the label. Expensive, of course. She always had expensive taste. I uncorked it, took a long swallow. The wine was smooth, velvety, with a hint of bitterness. Appropriate, I thought. I walked over to the window, looked out at the city lights twinkling in the distance. I raised the bottle in a silent toast. To betrayal, to lies, to the sweet taste of revenge. The first step had been taken. The financial noose was tightening, and Rachel, blissfully unaware, was about to find herself in a world of hurt. The annual Carter family barbecue, a monument to forced cheerfulness, awkward small talk, and enough potato salad to feed a small army. This year, however, I was adding a special ingredient to the mix, a heaping helping of truth serum, and a side of cold, hard revenge. I arrived fashionably late, of course. No need to rush the inevitable. The backyard was a kaleidoscope of pastel-colored lawn chairs, oversized umbrellas, and the general hum of polite conversation. My father, ever the patriarch, was holding court near the grill, regaling his captive audience with yet another one of his self-aggrandizing anecdotes. Rachel, ever the dutiful partner, was by his side, beaming adoringly. Or at least, pretending to. I made my way through the crowd, offering perfunctory greetings and accepting the occasional backpat. Everyone seemed to be in high spirits, oblivious to the bombshell I was about to drop. The irony was almost delicious. I reached my father's little gathering. He paused mid-sentence, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Probably just indigestion from all the grilled meat. "Liam, you made it," he boomed, clapping me on the shoulder a little too hard. "We were just talking about you." "Were you?" I said, my voice carefully neutral. "I'm flattered." Rachel gave me a tight smile. "We were just saying how much we admire your work ethic, Liam," she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. "You're such a dedicated architect." "Dedicated," I echoed. "Yes, I suppose you could say that." I scanned the crowd, taking in the faces of my aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them smiling, laughing, completely unaware that their idyllic little world was about to be turned upside down. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching a play unfold, a play I had written and was now directing. "Actually," I said, interrupting my father's flow of conversation, "I have an announcement to make." The chatter died down, all eyes turning to me. My father's smile faltered slightly. Rachel's eyes narrowed. She probably sensed something was coming, but I doubted she could have imagined the magnitude of what I was about to unleash. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. The white envelope that held the key to their destruction. "This," I said, holding up the envelope, "is the result of Noah's school DNA project." A few polite chuckles rippled through the crowd. "Oh yes, the Know Your Roots thing?" Aunt Carol chirped. "Isn't that cute?" "It is," I said, my voice cold and hard. "Very cute indeed." I opened the envelope and pulled out the document. The DNA test results. I unfolded it carefully, making sure everyone could see the official letterhead. "As you all know," I continued, my voice ringing out across the suddenly silent backyard, "Noah has been living with me and Rachel for the past 10 years. We've been raising him as our son." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Rachel's face was ashen. My father's eyes were narrowed, his jaw clenched. "However," I continued, "it turns out there's been a slight discrepancy, a rather significant one, in fact." I held up the DNA test results. "According to this," I said, my voice rising slightly, "Noah is not my son. He's my brother." A collective gasp swept through the crowd. The silence was deafening. All eyes were on me, then on Rachel, then on my father. What are you saying?" Aunt Carol stammered, her face pale. I'm saying, I said, my voice clear and precise, that Rachel has been having an affair with my father for years, and Noah is the product of that affair. The silence that followed was broken only by the chirping of crickets. Rachel was sobbing silently, her face buried in her hands. My father stood there, his face a mask of fury. You're lying, he finally managed, his voice hoarse. Am I? I said, my gaze fixed on him. I have the DNA test right here. Care to dispute it? He didn't answer. He couldn't. I turned to Rachel. Care to explain, Rachel? She shook her head, unable to speak. I thought not, I said. So there you have it, folks. The truth, the real story behind the Carter family's perfect image. I looked around at the faces of my family members, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust to pity. I felt nothing, just a cold, detached sense of satisfaction. The truth was out. The secret was exposed, and the carefully constructed facade of the Carter family was shattered into a million pieces. I had orchestrated this, planned it, executed it with a chilling precision. And now, as I stood there, watching the chaos I had unleashed, I felt nothing. Just a strange sense of emptiness. The first act of my revenge was complete, and it was just the beginning. The courtroom felt cold, sterile, a battleground of words and legal maneuvering where emotions were weapons and the truth was a casualty. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my lawyer, Mr. Davis, a man whose veins seemed to run with ice water, beside me. Across from us sat Rachel, flanked by her attorney, a woman who looked like she'd clawed her way up from the bottom and wouldn't hesitate to use those claws again. This is a straightforward case, Liam, Davis had said during our initial consultation. Adultery, deception, potentially fraud. We have the DNA evidence, the financial records, and a witness list that would make your father sweat. We'll paint her as an unfit mother, a gold digger who manipulated you and your father. Custody of Noah will be yours. He made it sound so simple. But as I sat there, watching Rachel's lawyer fire off objections and accusations, I felt a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. This wasn't just about money or revenge anymore. This was about Noah, my brother, the innocent victim in this whole mess. Mr. Carter, Rachel's lawyer, Miss Hayes, said, her voice sharp as a shard of glass. You claim that my client was unfaithful throughout your relationship. Do you have any proof of this infidelity beyond the paternity of Noah? Objection, Davis said, his voice a glacial calm. Relevance. Overruled, the judge said, his expression impassive. I glanced at Davis, who gave me a subtle nod. Yes, I said, my voice steady. I have financial records showing substantial transfers of money from my father's account to Rachel's personal account over a period of several years. These transfers began shortly after Noah was born. Hayes scoffed. Gifts from a generous grandfather to his son's partner. Hardly evidence of an affair. The timing of these gifts coincides with Rachel's claims of financial hardship, Davis countered. Hardship that conveniently disappeared once the payments began. Furthermore, we have evidence of secret meetings, encrypted messages, and hotel bookings that strongly suggest a relationship that was more than just friendly. Hayes' smile tightened. She was good, I'd give her that. But Davis was better. He'd anticipated her every move, countered every argument with cold, hard facts. He was dismantling her case piece by piece, exposing the lies and manipulations that had defined Rachel's life for so long. Mr. Carter, Hayes said, turning back to me, you claim that you were unaware of this, relationship. Is it not possible that you were simply oblivious? That you were so consumed with your work that you failed to notice the signs? Objection, Davis said. Calls for speculation. Sustained, the judge said. Hayes' eyes narrowed. She was losing, and she knew it, but she wasn't going down without a fight. She turned back to me, her voice laced with venom. Mr. Carter, she said, you seem very eager to paint my client as a villain, a manipulator. But let's not forget that you were the one who was absent. You were the one who was always working, always away. Is it not possible that you bear some responsibility for the breakdown of your relationship? Objection, Davis said, his voice rising slightly. Irrelevant and inflammatory. Sustained, the judge said. Miss Hayes, please stick to the facts of the case. Hayes glared at Davis, then at me. She knew she was on thin ice, but she wasn't done yet. She had one last card to play. Mr. Carter, she said, her voice softening slightly, you claim to be acting in Noah's best interests, but are you sure that this crusade of yours is not motivated by something else? Perhaps revenge? I met her gaze, my expression unwavering. My motivation is irrelevant, I said. The facts are clear. Rachel deceived me, manipulated me, and used my father to secure a comfortable life for herself. She is unfit to be Noah's guardian. I am the only one who can provide him with the stability and security he needs. Hayes opened her mouth to speak, but Davis cut her off. Your Honor, he said, we rest our case. The judge nodded. Miss Hayes? Hayes hesitated, then sighed. We have no further questions, Your Honor. The judge looked at both of us, his expression unreadable. The court will take the matter under advisement, he said. A decision will be rendered in due course. I stood up, my legs feeling shaky. It was over. For now, at least. The legal battle was fought. Now, all that remained was to wait for the verdict. But as I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a sense of relief. I had done everything I could. I had exposed the truth, fought for Noah's future, and faced my demons. And no matter what the judge decided, I knew that I had won. I had reclaimed my life, my identity, and my sense of self. And that was a victory worth fighting for. The sterile environment of the courtroom was a world away from Noah's reality. His reality was Legos scattered across the floor, superhero figurines guarding his bedside table, and the lingering smell of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. He didn't understand legalese, didn't comprehend the intricacies of custody battles. All he knew was that his world, once a comforting constant, was fracturing. Dad, he'd asked one evening, his voice small, why is Mommy crying all the time? I knelt beside him, my hand resting on his shoulder. Mommy's just going through a tough time right now, buddy, I said, choosing my words carefully. Is it because of you? He asked, his eyes wide and searching. No, Noah, I said, forcing a smile. It's not because of me. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements. It doesn't mean they don't love you. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of confusion and fear. But you and Mommy don't live together anymore, and you're always going to that court place. The court is just helping us figure things out, buddy, I said, trying to reassure him. It's helping us make sure you're safe and happy. He nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He was a smart kid, perceptive beyond his years. He knew something was wrong, even if he couldn't articulate it. Rachel, meanwhile, was pulling out all the stops. She bombarded Noah with affection, showering him with gifts, promising him the world if only he'd tell the judge he wanted to live with her. She even tried to turn him against me, whispering poisonous lies about my supposed abandonment and cruelty. But Noah wasn't buying it. He might be young, but he wasn't stupid. He saw through her manipulations, sensed the desperation behind her actions. And deep down, I think he knew, on some level, that I was the one fighting for him, the one who truly had his best interests at heart. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling court session, Noah came into my study, his face pale and drawn. Dad, he said, his voice trembling. Mommy said, she said you don't want me anymore. She said you're going to send me away. I felt a surge of anger, a primal urge to protect this child, this innocent caught in the crossfire of adult dysfunction. I pulled him close, held him tight. Noah, I said, my voice firm, don't you ever listen to that. I would never send you away. You're my son, and I love you more than anything in the world. He clung to me, his small body shaking with sobs. But she said, She's lying, Noah, I said, my voice breaking. She's just trying to scare you. Don't let her. I'm here for you. Always. We sat there for a long time, holding each other, two souls wounded by betrayal, finding solace in the simple act of human connection. In that moment, I made a silent vow. I would protect Noah, no matter the cost. I would shield him from the ugliness of the adult world, from the lies and manipulations of his mother and the callous indifference of his grandfather. I would be the father he needed, the anchor in his storm. And together, we would weather this, emerge stronger, and build a new life. A life based on love, trust, and the true meaning of family. The gavel slammed down, echoing in the hushed courtroom like a final nail in the coffin of my old life. Custody of the minor, Noah Carter, is awarded to the plaintiff, Liam Carter. The judge's voice was devoid of emotion, a mere recitation of the legal outcome. But for me, those words were a symphony of victory, a vindication of everything I'd fought for. Rachel's face crumpled. The carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the despair in her eyes, the realization that her web of deceit had finally unraveled, leaving her with nothing. No son, no partner, no financial security, just the bitter taste of her own machinations. My father, seated beside her, remained stoic. A flicker of annoyance, perhaps, but no remorse. He'd lost a pawn in his game, nothing more. He'd move on, find another source of amusement, another woman to manipulate, another life to exploit. I spared them both a final glance, a look that held not just contempt, but a profound sense of pity. They were hollow shells, driven by greed and ego, incapable of genuine connection or empathy. They were the architects of their own destruction, and I, the unwitting victim of their betrayal, had become the instrument of their downfall. I walked out of the courtroom, Noah's hand clasped tightly in mine. He looked up at me, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "So, I'm staying with you, Dad." I knelt down, meeting his gaze. "Yes, Noah," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You're staying with me, always?" He launched himself into my arms, his small body trembling with relief. I held him close, feeling a surge of protectiveness, of fierce determination to shield him from the pain and betrayal of the past. Later that day, I confronted Rachel. Not in the courtroom, not in the sterile presence of lawyers and judges, but in the empty shell of what was once our home. She stood in the living room, amidst the unpacked boxes and the lingering scent of her betrayal, a shadow of the woman I once loved. "It's over, Rachel," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You lost?" She looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed, her face pale. "Liam, please." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't beg. Don't make excuses. You had your chance. You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences." "But Noah is better off without you," I said, my voice hardening. "He needs stability, security, love, things you're incapable of providing." "That's not true," she protested. "I love Noah. I always have." "Love?" I scoffed. "You don't know the meaning of the word. Love isn't about manipulation, deceit, and using people for your own gain. Love is about sacrifice, commitment, putting someone else's needs before your own. It's about building a family, not destroying one." She flinched as if struck. "The truth, as they say, hurts." "You're right," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I messed up. I made mistakes, but I'm still his mother." "You were his mother," I corrected. "You forfeited that right when you chose betrayal over family, when you prioritized your own desires over his well-being." I turned to leave, then paused. "Goodbye, Rachel," I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but don't ever contact me or Noah again." I walked away, leaving her standing there, alone in the wreckage of her own making. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a weary sense of closure. As I drove away, Noah asleep in the back seat, I thought about family. It wasn't about blood. wasn't about shared genes or inherited traits. It was about love, loyalty, and the unwavering commitment to protect and nurture those you cared about. It was about building a foundation of trust, a sanctuary where vulnerability was met with compassion, not exploitation. I might have lost my father, my partner, and the illusion of the family I once cherished, but I had gained something far more valuable, a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. I had Noah, and I had myself. And together, we would redefine family, rebuild our lives, and create a future where love, not betrayal, would be our legacy. The scent of freshly cut grass and sizzling burgers filled the air. Laughter echoed across the backyard, mingling with the excited yelps of children chasing each other through the sprinklers. It was a scene of pure, unadulterated joy, a snapshot of a life I could barely have imagined a decade ago. Noah, now a lanky teenager with a quick wit and an easy smile, was engrossed in a heated game of basketball with his friends. He'd grown into a remarkable young man, kind, intelligent, and resilient. The scars of the past were still there, faint echoes in the quiet moments, but they no longer defined him. He had blossomed, finding his own path, his own identity, far from the shadows of betrayal and deceit. I watched him from the patio, a contented smile playing on my lips. My wife, Sarah, sat beside me, her hand resting warmly on mine. She was the antithesis of Rachel, a woman of genuine warmth and compassion, her love a steady beacon in my life. We had met a few years after the dust settled, drawn together by a shared understanding of what truly mattered. Together we had built a home, a sanctuary of love and laughter, where Noah could finally be a child, free from the weight of adult burdens. We had 2 more children now, a little girl with Sarah's bright eyes and a mischievous grin, and a baby boy who was the spitting image of his older brother. They were the embodiment of our love, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were still challenges, disagreements, the occasional slam door, and teenage angst. But beneath it all, there was a foundation of trust, a deep-rooted connection that had been forged in the fires of adversity. We had learned to communicate, to listen, to forgive. We had learned that family wasn't about blood or shared history, but about the conscious choice to love, to support, to be there for each other, no matter what. My father had passed away a few years back. We never reconciled, never found a way to bridge the chasm that his betrayal had created. I mourned the relationship we could have had, the father I had once believed him to be. But I also recognized that his absence had created space for something new, something better. It had allowed me to redefine what it meant to be a man, a father, a partner. Rachel had faded into the background, a ghost from a life I'd left behind. I heard whispers occasionally, rumors of her struggles, her regrets. I felt no animosity, no desire for further retribution. She was paying the price for her choices, just as I had paid for mine. As I watched my children play, their laughter filling the air, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. It had been a path fraught with pain, betrayal, and loss, but it had also been a journey of transformation, of resilience, of rediscovering the true meaning of family. I had learned that forgiveness wasn't about condoning the actions of others, but about freeing myself from the shackles of the past. I had learned that love wasn't a finite resource to be hoarded or withheld, but an endless wellspring capable of healing and renewing. And I had learned that family wasn't something you were born into, but something you created, nurtured, and cherished. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lawn. The laughter subsided, replaced by the quiet murmur of conversation as we gathered around the table, sharing stories and laughter, creating new memories to add to the tapestry of our lives. I looked at the faces around me, the faces of my family, my chosen family, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had been through so much, endured so much, yet here we were, stronger, more connected than ever. The past, with its betrayals and scars, would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I had found my redemption, not in revenge or retribution, but in the unwavering love of my family, the family I had built, the family I had chosen. And in that I had found my peace.